FPL double game week 33, everything you need to know. In today's video, a complete guide to make your final decisions going into the double. We're going to discuss if you're on bench boost or you're not. Should you be selling your Newcastle players that performed well? Someone like a Jacob Murphy. Is Saka worth the transfer if we don't think he's going to start both games? And he might be a rotation risk between now and the end of the season. Kevin De Bruyne is one of the most transferred in players this week, but is it worth it given they have an FA Cup semi-final and a few more potential rotation games on the horizon as well? We'll discuss all of that, what potential plans I have for my team. I've already confirmed one free transfer. I plan on making my assistant manager change as well, and I might take a -4 over the weekend for game week 33. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And what we're actually going to do is spend a little bit more time just answering some of the key questions in this video, some of the actual more detailed things. Because normally what we do is we have a look at sort of players to buy, benching rankings, which we will go through. But it feels like a lot of the questions this week are more around questions rather than actual players that you need to be buying this week. Because once you've decided if you're buying or selling a player, it feels quite obvious about what you're going to do. So we're going to answer a few more of the broader questions which I feel are being asked this week, and hopefully we'll answer them. First of all is what to do with your Newcastle players. Should you be selling them? So first thing to say is I've spoken about it. I do not like the Alexander Isak to Watkins move this week. I don't think Watkins starts both in the double. I think the chances are he starts one at a maximum. I think Marcus Rashford almost certainly start one at striker in the double. I actually think Rashford will start one and Watkins will start one, which means that I don't think he's a massively better asset than Alexander Isak. Plus, once game week 35 rolls around, I actually think that we might see regular starts from Marcus Rashford up front, and every single week you'll be wondering whether Watkins is going to start. And I just think Isak is a much better hold for the rest of the season, of course, as they hopefully chase down Champions League football, of course, as Aston Villa are, but Isak's minutes are much, much more secure. Then the next one, we start to have a look in the midfielders. Jacob Murphy has been incredible, but I do think some of those other midfielders you should be looking to buy are pretty good, particularly Morgan Rogers. Now, if you don't have the money to go up to someone like a Kevin De Bruyne or Bukayo Saka and you already own a Morgan Rogers, then selling Jacob Murphy doesn't feel like it's necessarily worth it. Someone like a Jared Bowen, someone like a Brian Mbeumo is a better long-term pick, but if you already own Rogers around that price, there's probably no one else. But I do like someone like a De Bruyne, someone like a Saka, an Mbeumo and a Jared Bowen over him. Then you start to have a look in the defence, and I don't think there's much use for a Dan Burn or a Livramento between now and the end of the season. The only week you potentially might play them is in game week 38 at home to Everton. Now, if you're on a bench boost, I wouldn't sell them for a -4 just because I don't particularly think any of the other defenders that you're looking to buy this week are actually worth it. If you already own a Saliba, if you already own triple Arsenal, if you already own Gvardiol, outside of that and you already own Munoz, I don't think a Connor Bradley, for example, is worth a hit. I don't think a Ezri Konsa is worth the hit either. If you can do those things for free, then it's fine, but I don't think I'd be forcing it for a -4, and it's fine just to bench boost with them there, because the bench boost, we'll talk about the chips later on in the season. There's no real good week to bench boost. With someone who's still got it and is having to play it in one of those weeks, I can tell you from first-hand experience, I plan on playing it in game week 36 or game week 37, depending on if we get doubles or not. And it doesn't look great in either of those weeks. And then game week 38 is just a nightmare for rotation normally. Then we're moving on to Manchester City midfielders. I think it's safe to say the ranking is probably De Bruyne, Savinho, and Phil Foden. We have seen Phil Foden be back in Manchester City training from Thursday and then again on Friday. He hasn't trained those since he went off against Manchester United almost a week and a half ago. So there is a risk about Foden's minutes, and we'll talk about him more when we get to my team. When we're looking at the midfielders, if you want to buy one, De Bruyne is definitely the best one to buy. The only issue is let's say they do double in game week 36, or even if they don't, I think it's fair to say the general expectation is he probably starts one in this double. Maybe he gets both, but I think there is a realistic understanding that he might not get both. Then if they double again in game week 36, just before the FA Cup final, I think it's a realistic expectation that he might not start both in that double further down the line. So I do think if you add up some of the fixtures, yes, he has Wolves in game week 35. There are some decent fixtures. And if you can get to him, and you can get to him for free, I do think it's worth it. But I don't think this high pedestal pick that we are seeing him as is actually worth it. If you own Savinho, I don't think I'd sell him. I do think he's still in their first choice 11. Apparently, he's been having a slight late fitness test, which is why he didn't start against Palace. If you own Savinho, I would hold on to him. Phil Foden and just generally on Manchester City, they are the early sort of deadline kickoff, no actual early kickoff, but the deadline kickoff for game week 30 3. So do hold on, and we might get some news on Phil Foden. I don't think it's worth selling him for a hit. Potentially you could go to Kevin De Bruyne, but there is a chance that he starts one in the double. There's a chance that Kevin De Bruyne starts one in the double. I do think there are actually some other non-Manchester City midfielders. Of course, you're not buying Phil Foden this week, though. Final one on this page is to have a look at some of the chips, talk about them. I think about 90% of people playing FPL will be playing a chip this week, whether it's bench boost, triple captain, assistant manager, potentially free hit, or wildcard as well. If you do want a free hit draft, I have put out a YouTube short, TikTok, Instagram covering what a free hit draft would look like. So go and find that. We're not going to actually cover it in this video. Again, if you're on bench boost, if you're considering bench boost, I would play it this week. The weeks later down the line don't look any easier to play it. So even if you've got triple Newcastle, you don't want to take a hit, that's absolutely fine. I would still be looking to play it this week. Even if you've got a Dan Burn and you're thinking, do I sell him for a -4 to bench boost? I probably wouldn't, because that defender you're buying in has to score a lot of points. And unless you've got an Arsenal spot, not sure it's particularly worth it. Triple captain, on the other hand, with the potential double in 36 gaining momentum and gaining likelihood because of the Spurs result in the Europa League last night, you could look to save that. Assistant manager, again, if you're looking to play it this week, we will have a look at some of the projections, but Arteta is definitely the most likely to win both this week. A few other potential key Game Week 33 questions is anyone actually worth the -4 this week? I don't really think they are in isolation of Game Week 33. I think Marmoush probably is if you're going to captain him. And I think Saka probably is if you're going to captain him as well. Outside of those two, maybe an Arsenal defender if you still haven't, if you're going to do Gabriel to Saliba, maybe that's worth a -4. But specifically this week, do I think that Murphy to Rodgers is actually worth a -4 this week? Probably not. Do I think that, for example, Savinho to De Bruyne is worth a -4 this week? Do I think Foden to Rashford is worth a hit this week? I don't think any of these things probably are in isolation of this week. But if you do look at it at a broader picture, if you look at it from if that transfer will benefit you from Game Week 35 to Game Week 38, then maybe they start to be. For example, if Rodgers doubles again in Game Week 36, you'll probably want him for that. So maybe it starts to think. So if you think De Bruyne is the best pick for Manchester City for the final 4 weeks of the season after their blank in Game Week 34, then it starts to be. But if you're looking specifically at this week, even Bukayo Saka, if we only think he starts one of the two in the double, is it really worth a hit if you're not going to be captaining him? Plus, with Saka, I know it sounds scary to go into this week without him, but from Game Week 35, when it comes straight in between the two Champions League legs, I don't think we'll be starting Saka at home to Bournemouth in 35, because I think he'll be a rotation risk then. So Saka, as an example, if you're looking to take a hit to buy him and you're not going to captain him, it might be scary, but I don't think it's worth it. Just to briefly cover some stuff on the doubles in Game Week 36. So there are predictions that the fixtures in Game Week 37 that clash with the FA Cup final could either go back into the midweek of 37 or forward into the midweek of a 36, causing a double in 36 and a blank in Game Week 37. With Spurs progressing forward in the Europa League, it does increase the likelihood of a double in Game Week 36 if Villa win in the next round of the FA Cup. Now, the reason that's important is because in Game Week 37, Villa played Spurs. And if Spurs are still in Europe, that fixture then can't go to the midweek of 37 because of the Europa League final. And in theory, it would move forward to the midweek of Game Week 36. Now, we should know the doubles in Game Week 36 if they're going to happen before the Game Week 35 deadline. It doesn't leave us a lot of time, though. Final big question is, what is the captaincy ranking? I do think Marmoush is first. I do think Saka's probably second if you want to chance it on the minute. Then you've got Kevin De Bruyne, also feels like you're chancing it on the minute, or you just play it safe with Salah away at Leicester, despite it being a single game week. Having a look at some key players to buy. So starting off in goal, I do think David Raya is number one. Then it is Martinez, and then it's Henderson. I don't mind Henderson. The long-term fixtures are looking pretty good. Most of you have probably already decided on what goalkeepers you're going to own for the double. It's worth noting there is no Ederson, but there's also no Ortega in this. It does sound like Ederson is going to miss the majority of the rest of the season, but it might not be all of it. He's been having a sort of groin issue, which has been keeping him out sporadically over the course of the season. If you look at his minutes, he's missed the odd game here or there. It does sound like Ortega will get this double. So if you need him just for the double, if you've got Ederson and another keeper, you could buy Ortega. The issue is Ederson is likely to be back and expected to be back before the end of the season. So if you buy Ortega now, it might cause you an issue further down the line. Moving into defense, we have got Saliba number one. Then it is Gvardiol. We've also got Kivior. He's my second favorite Arsenal defender just because I expect him to play both in the double. And I don't expect someone like a Timber to. So we've gone with Kivior number three. Then it is Munoz number four. If you haven't already invested in Crystal Palace, maybe it's not the best time to, given the double. Then we've got Ezri Konsa. I've gone with him just over Connor Bradley now. It's pretty close between the two. But with Trent back in Liverpool training, Bradley is fully expected to start Leicester. But from game week 35 onwards, it will be a big rotation, a big risk, whether it's going to be Trent or Bradley. So I probably would go with Konsa over Bradley now if you're looking to buy one this week. You could also punt on someone like Luca Dean, who does have pretty decent attacking threat. The only issue with that, again, we have seen Maatsen start some games recently for Aston Villa, so you could have a little bit of an issue there. Moving into midfield, of course, as I mentioned, with Saka and De Bruyne being slight risks, I've actually gone and put Morgan Rogers number one. If you're not going to captain Saka or De Bruyne, I actually think Rogers is a better buy this week. We have gone with Saka over Kevin De Bruyne just because I know how high his ownership is going to be this week, and there is a threat. If he does start both, he is probably the one that you want. Then it is Kevin De Bruyne. He's the only Manchester City midfielder on this. I wouldn't go buying Savinho and you. I wouldn't be going buying Foden, but if you've got them, there is a potential to hold on to them. Jared Bowen in at number 4 is a really, really interesting pick. Let me talk you through, particularly if you're on free hit 34, the fixtures that West Ham have left this season. Southampton at home this week. Game week 35, they play Spurs at home in between the 2 Europa League semi-finals. Game week 36, they play against Man United just after their second leg of their Europa League semi-finals. Game week 37, they play Nottingham Forest, which could be just before or just after their FA Cup final if they were to reach it. And then in game week 38, they play Ipswich. It could be a perfect storm of fixtures for someone like a Jared Bowen and for West Ham as well. I don't think loads of investment is needed in West Ham, but if you're looking for a midfielder, if we say, for example, that De Bruyne only starts one in this double and maybe only starts one in the 36 double, if that was the way it was to fall, Jared Bowen could be a better pick than De Bruyne and a safer pick with a group of fixtures which might just fall really nicely for them. Someone like a De Bruyne has a much higher upside. Someone like a Saka has the same. But maybe someone like a Bowen or even a Brian Mbeumo could be a slight differential pick at the moment who actually could have really good long-term prospects in your team. Number 5, we're going with Marcus Rashford in there just because I think he's the second best Villa mid. I do think he should start one of the two up front. Maybe Watkins gets the second game. It might depend on what Unai Emery wants to do in the FA Cup final the following weekend. FA Cup semi-final, the following weekend. Then we're moving up front. There is no Watkins on this list because I think the chance of him starting both games is almost zero. I think the chance of him starting one is about 60% and about a 40% chance he doesn't start at all. Marmoush is number 1. Then it is Mateta. The minutes for Mateta have been really concerning given the amount of fixtures they've got. From game week 35 onwards, though, they do have a nice run. Then it's Isak, then it's Visser, and then it's João Pedro. I actually don't like the forwards for the double game week fixture teams this week, really. Looking at benching decisions, to be honest, probably if you're on bench boost or if you're on bench boost, you probably don't need this. But if you're not, it's probably made up pretty easily for you this week. If you've got a double game week goalkeeper, you're probably going to start them. Raya, then it's Ortega, then it's Martinez, then it's Henderson, then it's Areola, and a few of the others. Kepa, Flecken, Verbruggen, Sells, and Nick Pope. In terms of attackers, Marmoush, if you own a definite start, we've got Saka, De Bruyne, Salah, Marino. Then you've got the Crystal Palace players in there. You've got Asensio, you've got Watkins, just because they're not guaranteed to play both games. But if you've got them, you probably start them. Then it's Savinho, and then it is Jared Bowen. But all the City players have got an asterisk next to them. This is bearing in mind that they are one of the early games going into the deadline on the deadline stream. And if we were to get them benched as early news, they would massively drop below this list. Because, for example, if Foden is benched, I think Jared Bowen is a better start, and same with Savinho. But if they start, you probably look to start your Manchester City midfielders. Jared Bowen I really like. I probably would just about start them over the Arsenal defenders in Saliba and Kivior. Both of them over Gvardiol, then Munoz. Then it's Palmer and Burmo. I quite like them. João Pedro. Probably play all of those. I probably would play Connor Bradley this week over Konsa, but I prefer buying Konsa over Connor Bradley for the long term. Then it's Julian Timber, just because I don't expect him to start both games. We've also got Alanga and Jacob Murphy. If you've got Kluivert, he is expected to be back in the Bournemouth squad. Then it is the Nottingham Forest defenders and the Newcastle defenders right at the end. Looking at the game week projections from Rob T FPL, no real bankers this week. Actually, some quite difficult fixtures to call across the board. Starting to have a look at them. Arsenal away at Ipswich and Liverpool away at Leicester, along with West Ham at home Southampton, are the 3 real ones. But we are expecting a decent amount of rotation for that Arsenal team, which might mean that these numbers are a little bit inflated and slightly too positive for that Arsenal team. The other one is Arsenal at home to Crystal Palace. Now, we are expecting a pretty full-strength Arsenal team there and maybe a rotated Crystal Palace team, which might actually make that second fixture where you could have captain on Saka maybe slightly better for us than maybe the first one. But in terms of clean sheets, Arsenal, Liverpool, and maybe West Ham. Outside of that, the clean sheets feel pretty difficult to predict. I might end up with an absolute horror show defensively as I did last week. Talking very briefly about the assistant manager, Mikel Arteta is top, followed by Pep. It's actually then Ange Postecoglou at home to Forest, but with them still being in Europe, I don't think I'd be going there. I would be focusing on a manager with a double game week. You've also got Unai Emery and Glasner in there. Now, I'm being asked a little bit, if you've gone Glasner and you're disappointed, would I move him to Arteta? If it's going to cost a -4, -8 to do it, I don't think I probably would. If you've got the Arsenal slot available and you can go straight Glasner to Arteta for maybe a -4, then it is something to consider. But if it's a -8 or more, I don't think I'd move it. But I do think Arteta is probably the best. Now, I do think there's a chance he doesn't win both games, just still being in Europe. They could rotate heavily away at Ipswich. Could that game end in a draw? Could Palace not rotate? Yes. I do think the high upside play this week is going with that Arsenal team, but I don't think it's quite as clear cut. That being said, I don't think any of the doubles are actually that great. Like looking at the City one, away at Everton, at home to Villa, doesn't feel that great either. So I do feel like Arteta is just probably the safest. So then going into my team, and I actually confirmed one transfer last night, and I did sell Jacob Murphy and I did buy Morgan Rogers. I still in theory have one transfer left available, but the reason it says 0 in brackets is because that transfer is going to be used on selling Eddie Howe, almost certainly to Mikel Arteta. There is about a 5% chance maybe that it goes to another assistant manager, but I'm definitely going to use a transfer on my assistant manager. And again, Arteta is the one I just think is clear for me this week, given I don't have triple Arsenal. And to be honest, I don't massively want triple Arsenal for game week 35 because of the rotation that we've spoken about. So Arteta is the most likely, which basically leaves me with no transfers. That's why it's 0. In theory, I still have one on the app and on the website, but I plan on using it for my assistant manager, which is then leaves me with Phil Foden. Just to cover a few more things on my team before we discuss Foden. Raya, Gvardiol, Konza, Munoz, the rest of its team kind of picks itself. I'm not certain Saka starts both in the double. I don't love the City double, but I think I'm just going to have to take what I expect to be 180 minutes for Marmoush versus 110 roughly for Saka. Even though the fixtures are better for Saka, if you think he is going to start both games, Saka is a better captain than Marmoush. But if you think he only gets 30 against Ipswich, maybe you think he can do enough damage in that 30 minutes and it's fine. But I think the minutes play is to go with Marmoush. Then it's the double Forest on the defence on the bench, and then it is Areola. So that goes back to Phil Foden. I have no transfers, so anything I do for a -4 is for a -4. First option I have exact money, 0.1, to go Foden to Kevin De Bruyne tonight. Foden was predicted to drop in price last night. He didn't. He is predicted to drop in price again tonight. I don't think that is what I'm going to do. I'm not certain De Bruyne starts both in the double. I think there's a chance Foden might start one in the double, similar to Kevin De Bruyne. I'm not sure that transfer is worth a -4 now that Foden is back in training on Thursday and Friday. That leaves me a few options. So going into the stream, hopefully we get something on Manchester City, although we didn't really get it last week when they were also the early kickoff. But if, for example, we hear that Foden is going to start, I could just play him. I will just play him if we hear that he starts. If we hear that he's benched, I have a few options. I can sell him, and there are a few players that I would go to. Marcus Rashford, and go and hope that he plays both, hope that he's a good pick. But I think most likely is I'd probably go to someone like a Jared Bowen or Brian Mbeumo, or I just bench him. I've got Alexander Isak, a ready-made first sub, and that is probably the sensible thing to do this week. Again, I spoke about it. -4s don't feel like they're worth it this week, but does it benefit me for the long term? Is just getting rid of Foden to Bowen a better long-term play than keeping Phil Foden for the long term when every single week it feels like it's going to be a headache? Quite possibly. Now, they are the early kickoff in game week 35 as well, so could we get some early team news there? Yes. I think the sensible thing to do if we heard he was benched would be to just bench him and play Isak and deal with it once game week 35 rolls around. And I think that's probably what I'm most likely to do. But I do look at the West Ham fixtures and think there could be something in it for Jared Bowen for the final 5 or 6 weeks of the season. But one transfer's made. Arteta is coming in. Foden, let's wait until the deadline. If there's news that he starts, of course, we'll play him. If there's no news, I'll probably just play him regardless. If we get news that he's benched, then I've got a decision to make of, do I sell him to Bowen for a -4? Do I go to Alexander Isak? Of course, if Foden doesn't drop in price tonight, I could go to De Bruyne, but I expect me to be priced out overnight this week. And I don't think I'm going to confirm a -4 for a player in De Bruyne. I'm just not certain he starts and gets enough minutes in the double. And that is all for the final decisions. I've spoken enough about the stream in this video as well. Of course, it is slightly later. It's 11:30 a.m. UK time until the 1:30 p.m. deadline. There was no sort of 12:30 early kickoff, which means we do have a handful of games as the sort of deadline games that we could get some early team news. Of course, most importantly, Manchester City. So we will be live. We'll be answering all of your questions, deciding on my final transfers, and particularly looking out, is Phil Foden going to start? Is Kevin De Bruyne going to start? Is Savinho going to start? All of that good stuff as well. The stream is already scheduled, so click the link above to set notified for when that stream goes live. Drop any questions you have in the comment section down below. I am still in Spain and it is predicted to rain all morning tomorrow. So I might have some time to answer some questions tomorrow. If not, bring them to the stream and we'll answer them as we go then as well. Thank you for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.